To Zoom or to shul? That is the question for today. Our Torah reading tells us of God's command, the Asuli Nikdash v'shachanti b'sochan. You shall make for me a holy sanctuary that I may dwell amongst them. This was the commandment to build the temple, a commandment where God is telling us it's in that temple that I shall dwell. But that's not the whole story on that temple, because that was not just a house for God. It was a house for all of us. We find in the Torah the commandment, and I quote, 3 times a year shall you appear before the Lord your God in the place that God will choose, referring to the temple in Jerusalem, on the festivals of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. 3 times a year, all of the Jews came to worship in that sanctuary, came together as one. We no longer have the Beit Midrash, the holy temple. Now we have the Mikdash Ma'at, the miniature sanctuary, the synagogues that took the place of the temple after its destruction. Synagogues today are meant to be 3 things: a Beit Midrash, a house of learning; a Beit Tfilah, a house of prayer; and a Beit Knesset, a house of assembly. This becomes a challenge in this era of the Zoom. We've had to live with coronavirus. That required a significant change in our approach to religion. Every survey indicated that more and more Americans are becoming secular or nuns, having no religion. 25% of young Jews identify that way. All of a sudden, coming to shul became a challenge. And while most Orthodox synagogues, unable to use Zoom on computers on Shabbos, continued with business as usual, it wasn't as usual. Some services started meeting as a small group in backyards, some in basements. The non-Orthodox synagogues turned to Zoom, with some of the Zoom services coming out of New York proving to be so popular that I know members of our own synagogue became regular worshipers. Why not? It beats dressing and schlepping to shul when you can watch the service wearing your pajamas in your living room. So we're faced with 2 extremes: the miracle of the digital and the dwindling attendance in the synagogue. But listen to these words from myjewishlearning.com. The Pilgrimage Festival created an opportunity for the Jewish community to reaffirm their communal commitment to the covenant with God, strengthen their self-identification of the nation as a religious community, and entrench the sanctity of Jerusalem and the place where the temple stood as a religious consciousness of the people. These festivals were at their core a community building experience. And I tell you, you can't have that on Zoom or even praying in your basement. And that's not just my opinion, that's Elvis Presley's opinion. He once said, a live concert to me is exciting because of all the electricity that is generated in the crowd and on stage. It's my favorite part of the business, live concerts. Every entertainer thrives on a crowd, but it's not just entertainers or athletes. In the book of Proverbs, we're told, Barov am hadras melech. In multitudes, there is glorification of the King of the universe. Yes, even God loves a crowd. I don't know if we're doing that these days. On the one hand, conservative and reform synagogues are merging these days, and people are tuning in on Zoom. In our Orthodox community, we have a different problem. Look in the Erev book. There are about 45 shuls listed as being Orthodox. Now, if you consider that the entire Orthodox community, for all practical purposes, lives within 2 or 3 miles of each other, that means it's just about 20 shuls per mile. Some see this as a great strength. You have to excuse me, but I see it as a great weakness. It's part of the shtibelization of America, and that weakens Klal Yisrael. When an Orthodox community faces problems of children at risk and hanging out on Friday nights and so many other problems, the answer is not going to come from 40, 50 shuls, each operating as if the other doesn't exist. What we see happening in our Orthodox community and many Orthodox communities today is unfortunate living by a way of life that our people always frowned upon. In our tradition, one of the negative things that we said about someone was, Emach Shabbos vazich alein. He's making Shabbos for himself. That's just what we see in many shuls. They make Shabbos for themselves, and for the rest of the week, they hardly exist. When we need to join forces on behalf of Israel, it's not going to come from little shtibels. The sale of bonds comes from the big shuls, not the little ones. When we seek solutions to communal problems through support for the associated, it comes from the big shuls, not the little ones. You get it? I hope to see you in shul live. Shabbat Shalom.